Signori e signori, buongiorno, se volete prendere posto.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Please take your seats as we are about to start. Good morning, first of all, welcome everybody and thank you for being here. Now let me start by some housekeeping rules. First of all, I would like to thank the people who allowed us all this. So those who supported us with their energy, with the financial sponsorship, that is, first of all, the mayor of Biella and the city council, the regional council of Piedmont, and especially the European consultation, the association Biella Città Creativa, the Chamber of Commerce, Monte Rosa, Laghi, Alto Piemonte, the Foundation Cassa di Risparmio. I also would like to thank Cordar, Banca Sella, Vitale Barberis Canonico, Drago, Formaggi Botalla, and the shopping mall I Giardini. And today we also have the National Council of Architects, planners, designers, and landscapers. I also would like to thank the Ministry of Education, our territorial office. I also would like to thank the Cortocircuito Association, that is the organization of the municipality of Biella. They coordinate these two events. We have great guests today and tomorrow, and tonight at the Odeon Theatre we will also have master tailors, and we will also have some entertainments. We will have Birra Menabrea, Photo Club Biella, and Montagne Biellesi. So thank you. Thanks to all the people who are allowing us to be here. I really would like to thank all the sponsors, for all those who are also working while being present at the forum, and also for the press. I would like to remind you that we have two channels today, in English and Italian, to allow the 295 creative cities of UNESCO around the world to be able to listen to us. So you just have to frame the QR code, and from there you can easily connect with a YouTube live streaming. Everything will be recorded, so it will also be available on our YouTube channel. You can also grab the headsets, because today, and I'm very proud of that, I hope my husband will not be mad at me, but I have been chasing Mr. Kaiser, who will do his speech in English. So if you prefer to listen to the Italian translation, please pick up the headset. And you can listen to the translation into English on channel 1 and 2 for English. So please follow us on Biella Città Creativa. And if I may, I wish you a very fruitful first day. Let me introduce the institutional greetings by our mayor, Claudio Corradino. So, hello to all the distinguished speakers and to all the students who are here willing to learn and listen. I hope this morning can be full of instructions and information, and maybe something that can be useful for your future will get into your head. You know that we need you because you are a future. We are just here to try to keep our assets as well as we can, but we want to deliver it into your hands because you will have to carry it on. So going back to this forum, thank you first of all to all the people. Thanks, Barbara, for all the work you've been doing. After 2 years, we go back to a UNESCO forum here in Biella. This is something that UNESCO Creative Cities must do, and for a good reason. We are now doing this on water. Water and Biella have a very close relationship. You see that our textile culture was born here because our water is particularly good for it, particularly good for washing wool. When chemistry was not as developed as it is today, thanks to the fact that this water has a pH that is close to neutral, we could wash the wool beautifully and get very good results. This is what made Biella different from the rest of the world. And now we still have the most beautiful fabrics. We also have Lauretana, that is one of the best waters in Italy. So water is very important for Biella, and it characterized its economy for a very long time. So this forum focused on the values of water and the environment takes us back to water. The continual raising of global temperature is changing a little bit of everything in the world. And also here in Italy, we are paying the toll. We had very warm weather until last week, and now we have autumn all of a sudden. So it is important to defend the territory because we defend the climate too. The protection of the soil and the culture of water means also facing the complexity of these elements, facing sustainability from an economical, social and ethical point of view, which requires the utmost cooperation of everybody to be able to affect the consumption and living conditions of the citizens. Going back to seeing water as a resource that must be valorized. These 2 days will have the goal to weave new relations and study good practice to face the climate changes so that our community can have control tools and won't be unprepared in view of a sustainable pathway with a responsible exploitation by men, not creating damages. So I wish you a fruitful day and welcome to Biella.
Grazie,
Thank you, Mayor. And now I would like to call Cristiano Gatti. Cristiano is the Deputy President of the body of the Cassa di Risparmio di Biella, and for a few days he's also been Deputy President of Città Studi, the University of Biella. Good morning, everybody. We were all joking about the rain as we are starting this forum dedicated to water, so it might be lucky, as it is said at weddings. So we hope that we will be lucky because of the rain. The president of the Cassa di Risparmio di Biella, Mr. Colombo, is greeting you, and also the president of the University Città Studi, Mr. Rondi. We speak of the foundation, and it is important to remember that our foundation played a crucial role in the project of candidateship of Biella as a UNESCO city, because we wanted this acknowledgement, especially to plan sustainable development strategies, starting from an awareness of our heritage and our know-how, which must involve different entities and the citizens too. This candidateship was developed in the foundation thanks to the intuition of the former president, Mr. Ferraris, with a great process of territorial sharing and we involved all the area, creating active networks, funding initiatives that were planned by several entities on the territory, and that then they entered into the candidateship folder. So we not only valued the creativity, but also the history and all the peculiarities of our province. Some realities evolved in a positive way thanks to the UNESCO acknowledgement. For instance, today, here at university, we ought to remind the agreement for 20 years with the University of Turin, which was also signed by the city of Biella, which took to the opening of the cultural heritage and creativity for tourism and territorial development. That is a new degree with many students, an added value that will also value all our potential. This degree was presented at the previous forum in 2021. It was the 1st of October in this very seat, and we want to create a profession to train professional profiles that have an interdisciplinary background for the heritage and for creativity, which is the driver of the development of the territorial and touristic network, also in cooperation with the natural environment. Also in Biella Città Creativa, the foundation is focusing on the goals of sustainable development by involving schools. We have created Muse alla Lavagna and created an observatory that adopted the view for the future that is the basis of the SDGs, that were a reference point for the choice and selection of the 170 indicators that represent the heritage of Biella. This planning was aimed at a sustainable growth from a social, economic and environmental point of view. So UNESCO is a sum of values for the whole territory that should be enhanced and protected. So I wish you a good forum by Foundation Cassa di Risparmio di Biella. Welcome to our town.
Allora, grazie.
So thank you, Cristiano Gatti. And one more important greeting from the Chamber of Commerce, Mount Rosa, Lakes and High Piedmont. We have Alessandro Ciccioni, sorry. Good morning. I welcome you on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce and especially our president, Mr. Ravanelli. During this day, we will speak of water from the point of view of sustainability in its use, its management, and conservation. I thank the speakers that will take their turn on this stage with their important contribution, and I would like to thank the guilds, associations, and the companies from the territory that will also be here in the afternoon, because this is the part that the Chamber of Commerce is most interested in. And these are the ones that really take to the ground all the suggestions and inspirations that we get from academia and from scientific research. So I wish you a good climate of open mind without populisms and ideologies. So here I am. Now I am going to open all the sessions. I thank you all for being here, all the guests, all the authorities, and all the people who are listening to us, all the administrators, all the directors and colleagues from other creative cities around the world. Today there's also the summit in Bergamo. So at different times they will broadcast what we are doing And let me remind you why we are here and why this forum is so important. It is important because government leaders and high-level representatives from the UN and from civil society met in 2015 to adopt the famous Sustainable Development Goals. We must all comply with them by 2030. They represent an agenda for people and by people. UNESCO contributes to the realization of the goals, working in many fields: education, sciences, human sciences and social sciences, culture, communication, information, all the SDGs for the environment, and especially in the next 10 years for the oceans. Our forum is working with the Italian UNESCO Commission on the Creative Cities program. This network was created in 2004, and it promotes cooperation between cities that identified in creativity a strategic element for urban sustainable development. It is divided into 7 areas, the so-called clusters: music, literature, crafts and folk art, and here we also are, media arts, design, gastronomy and cinema. 205 cities around the world cooperate for one single goal: make art and creativity the focus of their development plan at local level. They cooperate actively. All creative cities are committed for sharing good practice, innovation. They want to involve in cultural life all the citizens, integrating urban policies for sustainable development. And today we are faced with an important topic: water in the environment, landscaping, protection of the soil, the defense and protection of work, but most of all of life, because from water, life is born. We all have one same goal. We are here to adopt a cultural change. We want to affect how people consume and live. For all of us, we want water to become the valued resource. It is not a chance if the UN is celebrating on the 22nd of March every year the World Water Day. We must also reconsider our investments in the water system, the tariffs, resilience, environmental impact. Today, representatives from the water world, from university, academia, from entrepreneurs who recognize water as a driver for strategic development, and they will speak of what we are faced with every day: green public procurement, on the integrated water system, on rainwaters, and on the financial regulation of the public sector. Today and tomorrow we will also mention the textile sector. That is an international excellence for us. It means work, it means entrepreneurship, and we are faced with the global industry from our cluster. In Biella, we aim at sustainability, at green practice, and the maintenance of our traditions. We also have congresses, trade fairs, and a lot of research. We are applying a new project, Greening Education by the UN, which was launched last year for UNESCO cities. We have an education that valorizes the topics of the climatic crisis to create a new culture for our youth. And I would like to thank them for being here today. You are a crucial value for us, not just a policy by UNESCO. You really are the ones that will carry on in their lives the goals and the sustainability in your way of doing. All of this belongs to a wider program, Green Education, one of the 6 calls of the Summit Transformation Education of the UN. So today, with other 80 countries, we are starting important progress. We are participating in a transformation, a shift of education in the world for all the citizens. Today, you can also see the pictures from Namibia. A beautiful work by Photo Club Biella, also a proof of the cooperation between Italy and Namibia. In particular, the development of the region of Caracas and the municipality of Kidmanshou. Biella has been working with Kidmanshou in training with workshops for textile workers and is committed to mentorship for its future candidateship in the craft folder folk art. We also want to focus on, we want to dedicate this to Namibia, a country that has experienced decades of drought in southwest Africa and is considered one of the driest countries in the world. The country suffered a lot from drought since 2013 until now. 4 times it declared national emergency due to scarcity, to shortage of water. 83% of rainwater evaporates and only 1% is left available to recharge water courses. We are as close as ever, and this is the true cooperation that we are proving at international level with the cities and countries that need our support. This is also an occasion to face urban and local fragility and environmental fragility, also in view of the next World Water Forum that is going to be held in Bali next year and is perfectly matched with the Alps, with the Alp program that Biella developed in 2021, getting the title of Biella Città Alpina. Biella is moving and working with all these realities at international and national level. We are now proving that Biella is ready to face any challenge, not just to protect its territory, not just for its citizens, but by facing with a sensible view all these topics without anxiety, but with the tools that science is providing. And we want to do this together today because this challenge can't be faced on our own. We have to face it with all the cities from all the world. We are not on our own. I thank you, and now I'm going to leave you in the company of someone, a journalist, a science communicator who for years worked on the environmental topic, and that will be the moderator for today, Marco Merola, also teacher at the Politecnico of Turin at a 2nd level Master on Climate Change. Marco Merola today will guide us in this journey between UNESCO, Alpine cities, and our speakers. So thank you for accepting this invitation. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Marco Merola.
Ringrazio io.
I would like to thank Barbara Greggio, Renato Lavarini, the people that I have contacted during the last days, more than my relatives actually. I would like to thank you because in the scope of my job, I will present and introduce my activities, but in developing my job, I was lucky since I travel a lot. But maybe I've never traveled to Biella, so that this is the first time that I'm here for the Forum 2023 dedicated to water. And this is the first occasion that allows me to visit the city. It is raining actually, but this represents the first contact with your city, and I hope that I will have the possibility to visit it again. I will try to introduce my job and to introduce this forum and to let you understand why I'm here today instead of others, journalists or colleagues, exactly for the issues that I'm dealing with, but also for the sessions that Barbara Greco has presented. This is a long day and full of interventions, greeting international and excellent guests and speakers linked to the issues that we will face together, so that we will have politicians, science communicators dealing with climate, but also policymakers that have to work with these current issues. And during the afternoon, we will also trade associations, especially the textile industry, manufacturing industry, that is fundamental to involve, so that I think that opening a debate, a public debate, together with these trade associations is essential. I will ask for the strategies carried out today, but also in the future, to embrace change. I will speak a lot about embracing. I do not want to talk about fight against climate change, war, and so on. I do not like these words. Change is current. It is a climate crisis, as English colleagues always define it. We have to adapt to mitigate this current context, but we have to welcome it, to embrace it, so that we have to change the perspective. We do not have to fight against anything. Nature is stronger than human beings. So that many guests will intervene during this day. We will try to give space to everybody, so that I would like to start with a short presentation, because before talking about the activity that I'm developing, I think that as journalists, I should offer to the audience something important, which is the context where we are in. We will talk about water, about mountains, glaciers, climate, and also about the consequences and the results that all this situation has on our daily activities, so that I should give a context, especially to welcome the students who are here, so that these first slides has a lot of information. The state of art of the current situation. We do not have enough water in the world. Just 3% of the water in the planet is a potential drinking water for domestic use. And 70% out of the available water is used for agriculture, 20% for manufacturing industries and business, and 10% of it for domestic use by the citizens. Of course, the rigid climate crisis we are living and we are witnessing as experts by the IPCC, the cluster of scientific committees under the scope of the UN, explain this situation. So the situation is worsening. Drought will affect our world, and less people will have the possibility to have access to drinking water. As Italians, our behavior is not that positive, since the per capita consumption of water is terrible, about 220 liters per day compared to the 165 liters per day of the European average. I would like to shock the audience saying that, especially to the students, having a shower for 5 minutes will consume lots of liters. You know how many? More or less 50, 60 liters of water. So that about 40 bottles of water. And you do not know maybe how many things you can do with this quantity of water, so that our daily habits are sometimes enough. Nobody can say that our daily habits do not represent something that can change the situation. The world population accounts for more than 8 billion. We will reach 10 billion people. So everybody should eat and drink, and water should be enough for everybody, so that we have to act today, changing our daily habits. One of the issues that we will dealing with today with Mr. and Professor Kazer is mountains. The relation between mountains and climate. And again, this is not something positive. I chose that image to tell something about mountains. This is not related to Italians' mountains. This is China. And it takes an essential image from the Olympics Games in 2022 in China. These are not ski slopes. Of course, no natural snow, but artificial snow. But Olympics Games were fundamental. And after 4 years, we are doing the same. Because in 2026, with a minimal forecast of snowing, we will host in Italy next Winter Olympics Games, despite the shocking data and opinions of the experts, because they are telling us that we do not have to pave this way. It is totally wrong. And again, in relation to this situation, Italians are not the only ones that do not have a long-term vision, choosing a past model belonging to the past world. And you, as students, are experiencing a warmer world. And last 20 years have been acknowledged as the hottest and warmest days in the world, so that we have a different culture about planet. Despite all this, we are continue to do the same things that we were doing in the past. This is wrong. This is not working, actually. And in Italy, we will host Olympic Games, and this is Switzerland. I will talk about France, but in these countries, this is a shocking images, because to prepare the season ski races in Zermatt, they have totally paved the wrong path through this digger to create the ski race, so that glaciers are melting, and glaciers represent the tank of water, represents the future, your future, especially in a situation in which forecasts are explaining that glaciers will melting and melting. And what we are doing, we are destroying the most important elements in the cryosphere to allow people racing the ski races. Are we stupid? Are we silly? Yes. According to my opinion, we should change something. The same applies to France, not for ski races, but for uphill plant. But this is not useful, since there is no snow actually. And the same applies to the zone. Local communities are protesting against these kind of activities, which are destroying a natural heritage, ensuring us water against water shortage in the next future. And we are affecting this system. Human beings do not change fast, but nature changes fast. I have called this slide adaptation. I will explain why I'm using this term. It means adaptation. Among these strategies, we are trying to adapt to these changes. And one of the strategies that has been planned by some people, not by experts, is doing snow farming, so that cultivating snow. And then to use it for touristic purposes. And once more, not considering the consequences of this kind of strategy. And once more, we are not understanding the right direction to pave. Of course, these consider business and other purposes, but we should change our way of living, our business activities. This is essential. Nature disagrees with these kind of strategies, so that covering snow, hoping that this is not melting, it's something incredible. And again, this is the job we are carrying out with some colleagues. The key word is adaptation, the final steps of a strategy, an international strategy, that is a climate change strategy. So adapting to climate change. Adapting does not represent a defeat. The strategy to adapt is something similar to mitigation. Mitigate means reduce and reach the net zero emission level as the UN is recommending, so that reducing CO2, methane, oxides resulting from cars pollution and so on. This action takes a lot of time, and during lockdown we realized that that was a perfect time to reduce the CO2 emissions. Lockdown lasted about 1.5 years, 2 years more or less. Well, we have reduced these CO2 emission by 3-4%. These represent the amount of the emission that have been reduced. But this is difficult, and science experts do not know how much time it will take. But in the meantime, floods are increasing, heavy rains are increasing. In Italy, we have literally translated heavy rains with rain bumps, but we are not thinking about fight, about war. Nature is not mean. Yes, the nature is killing us. Actually, these are silly things, because we are creating a system that the nature cannot bear. Our activities are focused on adaptation. We have carried out the first web doc, freely accessible for everybody. Adaptation, this is the title, and we are traveling around the world telling about the protagonists and the stories of adaptation. I will just shortly list it, some elements, and then there will be a little video. I love this image in Calabria, near Crotone province. And this machine is ploughing the desert for the drought that exacerbated this phenomenon. But people do not want to leave their land. This is not true, saying that people want to escape and to abandon their land, so that local communities started not to impact and affect this landscape. We will talk about agriculture, about food, and this is linked to climate crisis. As we have seen, we are waiting for European decree so that we should stop the cultivation of corn and wheat to protect earth. But of course, we should consider also the business perspective according also to northern and southern regions. We will understand how to deal with, but this is necessary. And then we will talk about 4.0 agriculture, so how to use innovation and technology to simplify those processes that nature is not able to manage. Through these sensors, also farmers should evolve and work towards innovation to protect their culture. And the quotation that I would like to share with you, according to Leon G. Mackison, the professor of management and marketing in Louisiana State University, recalling On the Species by Darwin. Of course, you know Darwin. And please, you have to study, to check through your smartphones about Darwin, because this theory is fundamental. And he said that according to On the Species by Darwin, it is not the most intellectual of the species that survives. It is not the strongest that survives, but the species that survives is the one that is able best to adapt and adjust to the changing environment in which it finds itself. And 60 years ago, somebody was thinking about great changes affecting the planet and human beings. So, with my colleagues, we started 5 years ago to develop this project, adaptation. Check for the website. So that developing the American colleagues in European Post, Guardian, and so on, we have carried out the first cross-media work related to climate change and climate crisis. I would like to invite you to visit it and to check it. We are working with Piedmont region to expand and to develop this project. Adaptation includes the web dog, but also podcasts through Audible Amazon. During lockdown, we have talked about the adaptation strategies of Italian people during lockdown. And then, of course, events. We have participated in international projects helping us to convey these messages in relation to climate change and crisis, and also with private bodies during this great challenge in communication dealing with sustainability. They have supported us. I would like to share a little video and then we will start with the debate. This video tells about water. The title is Adaptation Drops. This is a kind of surprise because we have edited this video just for this forum. I think that everything works.
2022 and 2023 will be remembered as the years of climate change and floods. Many rivers are flooded, and on mountains it's now just 63% less. Water is a limited resource. It must be managed smartly. Now Europe allows us to recover it from drain water to use it in agriculture. Human beings are not so different from trees. They compete for water, but then they adapt.
Bene, allora adesso...
Very well, then now it is time to really start our long day, and we will do it with a very important guest. We are in the environment of the Alpine Convention. Our guest is Nathalie Morel, Senior Executive Officer of the Permanent Secretariat of the Alpine Convention, and her speech is linked to the Alpine Convention as a framework for sustainable water management. But I have a question for her. I'm going to ask questions, everybody, so please be aware of that. Just a couple of words for the students. The Alpine Convention is a document that is extremely important, and it dealt a lot with water. Today we mainly speak of water. One of the goals of the convention is to restore the quality of water and waterworks, protect its quality, make works that are compatible with nature. It dealt with it in the report on the state of the Alps, that was status of the water resources, and also in the period between 2017 and 22, because one of the priorities was to adopt measures to contrast climate changes, and especially during drought periods. So this convention is very forward-looking, and they also want to promote green economy and keep biodiversity. So if she is connected... Yes, good morning. Hello, welcome. So if you prefer, I can ask you my question. Do you prefer it in English or Italian? Italian is good, but I will reply in English. We have already introduced the Alpine Convention to our guests today, but you will do it more properly. I think you have 15 minutes for your speech. So the Alpine Convention had a work schedule that closed in 2022, starting in 2017 with the goal of promoting green economy, adaptation, and so on. Of course, the task of the Alpine Convention is also advocacy, so raise awareness also among politicians, stakeholders, and decision makers, and they do it by promoting the protection of biodiversity, rationalization of water, thermal, of hydropower. Italy has a great installed potential in hydropower. We are very much based on hydropower, and we also mentioned adaptation to dryness. Can you please tell us if the results of your work, not only of monitoring are there in awareness raising among politicians and in the communities, because everything starts from there. Well, I think there is no single answer, no yes or no answer. Everything we do, and that I will try and explain in my presentation, must be listened to and developed also in the participation of many stakeholders, public stakeholders at a national level, because this is an agreement between nations, but also at a local levels. So we should also involve many civic society associations, NGOs, and we really want to believe that our work has an impact. We have technical works, we have political work. Of course, you can always say that it is never enough. We are never listened to enough. So we have to keep working on these topics, but it's still better than nothing. And one way that we have been taking in the last few years, and it also adds something to what was already mentioned today, we work with Africa. So in the Alpine Convention, we try and join forces with other mountain regions in the world. For instance, we have a partnership and an exchange with Himalaya, where we have other dimensions. It's different from the Alps, but also with the Andes, with the Carpathians and the Pyrenees. We try and work in forums, in global forums with them. Like I'm speaking of the climate COP, on the Convention for Biodiversity. We try and speak with a single voice from the mountains to pay attention to vulnerability, and also to bring the competence and skills of the organization that we have developed in the mountains. For centuries there, we have been working with nature, so we can also suggest some solutions. I also wanted to ask you, and we are going to ask this question over and over again during the day, but I am going to ask this to all the people who might have interesting answers, so you too. I don't know if you listened to my previous presentation, also in view of constructing a new mountain culture, a new culture of the Alps, from the point of view of businesses, of sustainable businesses, from the point of view of tourist exploitation that must be really sustainable to protect those ecosystems. And for all this, so can the Alpine Convention have its say? How do they plan to act in the near future? Well, our reason for being as a convention, our added value, really is cooperation. Cooperation between countries, as ecosystems and threats do not stop at borders. And this is always what fosters us, and also cooperations and partnerships at all levels, globally, internationally, in Europe, in the Alps, at a local and national level, but also between several sectors. The topic of water, we have already seen it a little bit in the beautiful pictures that you have shared, is a cross-sectoral topic. So we really must work and exchange with all the people that have something to do with its use and protection. So from your observatory, from the Alpine Convention, of all the criticalities that have been certified concerning our Alps, the European Alps, but of course these criticalities might also be shared by other mountains in the world, as you will probably, as Mr. Kaiser will also explain later. But of these, what are the priorities of the Alpine Convention for the near future? On what should we work harder? So you mentioned our work program, and I thank you for this. Last year, we adopted a new plan that starts now until 2030. That will be a very important year. Yes, we want to align with the SDGs. And so we established 3 priorities. And all the work that the convention will be doing will be based on these. One is biodiversity, one is climate, and the third one is the quality of living. They are all connected, and every action we perform, even if we work on agriculture, we must prevent that agriculture has an impact on climate change. We must adapt agriculture to new climates. So we must develop new crops and new practice. Agriculture is also crucial for biodiversity. A huge responsibility to help the conservation of biodiversity. And then the quality of living. That is what pushes us as human beings in the alpine space. Our quality of living is very much linked, even more than in the plain or in the cities. In the Alps, the mountain also defines our quality of living. And so at global level, or also in Europe, it is not too bad now, but we must keep it, and we must also face crisis. Climate crisis and biodiversity crisis. So these are our 3 priorities. Everything we do should help us face this. As this is an international cross-border convention, as the Alps are mountains that are not only in Italy, also in other countries. So on these priorities that you mentioned, do you have any competence areas? Like, for instance, the Italian part of the Alps will deal with something in particular, and you will deal with other things. How did you share the work? The aim of the convention is to work together. So we have a presidence that changes every 2 years. Now the presidency is Slovenia. Then from 25 to 26 it will be Italy. And we have priorities on which we should work a little bit more. Slovenia is actually in line on the 3 priorities that I mentioned before. So biodiversity, they are going to see how they can help the actuation of the Alps on the new framework convention, the Kuning-Montreal. You might know it. On climate, they decided to face the topic of climate education, environmental education, especially in schools, on the climate issues. We had a convention last week in Slovenia, and on the quality of living, this is the first time that we face this topic directly. So there will be a group of international experts from all the Alpine countries, and they will prepare a report, a research on how to define quality of living. They won't just say we live better here than there, but we really want decision makers to have tools to define some points to improve the quality of living. Maybe in a small town it will be better transport, in another it will be something different, and so these are the priorities that we have now for the Slovenian presidency. We have work groups, and they are all transnational. So despite the presidency of one country or another, there will be others that work together. So the experts come from all the Alpine countries, and they will work together on climate, biodiversity, soil protection, and forests. And these groups always have a 2 years mandate, and then we stop and we see on what we want to go on. I hope that I replied. Yes, absolutely. You mentioned something interesting, that is that 2025-26, the presidency will be Italian, and 26 is also the year of the Olympic Games that will be hosted in Milan and Cortina, quite ironically. And we know that the slate track will not be in Cortina but in Innsbruck, concerning the bobsleigh. And quite ironically, Italy will have the presidency in 26, but it will host these very controversial Olympic Games, which is a little bit against the situation that mountains are facing now. I would like to know your opinion about it. And even if the Alpine Convention has a position on that, to have the Winter Games in Italy when it does not snow anymore. At the time, we had prepared a position because we work at a diplomatic level. No country suggested that we should prepare a common position on that. So, of course, there will be opportunities during the Italian presidency to communicate and raise awareness on all the environmental topics, also in the context of the Olympic Games. But do you agree on the fact that in a view of sustainability and impacting action, when we are organizing the Olympic Games with new infrastructure and we are invading the mountains more and more, is not really in line with the goals that we have internationally? On this, I would like to reply privately at a personal level. I am French. Sorry, before I also mentioned some protests that took place in France at the Gison, in the Gison Valley. Yes, on the Olympic Games, I've lived in Innsbruck for 7 years. And a few years ago, they also had an idea in the Tyrol region to candidate for the Winter Olympic Games. I could not vote because I am French, but of course I thought about it. Sorry about my Italian. No, thank you. Thank you very much. I can also reply in English. Personally, I don't like the fact that there are new facilities and the crowd and traffic, etc. But then I thought Olympic Games will take place anyway. Many alpine regions refused, also in Germany. There were referendums in Switzerland too. So what happened? They were allocated to China or other countries where environmental criteria are even different. And also when the Olympic Games took place in Russia, well, maybe in Europe at least we can pollute a little less. It won't be good for the mountains, but maybe in a way I would be sorry to say no, we won't do it, but we leave the responsibility to people who do it in a less sustainable or less democratic way. So there are two sides of the coin on this question. Like, you can have a strong opinion and say, no, we are not doing this. we don't take this responsibility, but at this time, in the current world, somebody else will do it. So not everything is white or black. One last thing before saying goodbye, just a couple of minutes on water management. The title of your speech was really based on water management in the beginning. So what are the most urgent actions on this that can't be postponed for good water management that is really sustainable? So how should we manage water? You also have a couple of minutes to express your point of view, and then I have to say goodbye. A great priority that is also a part of our action plan for climate is to have a transnational management of water in these watersheds that are between several countries. So if we want to have an impactful action, this is crucial. There's a responsibility of those who are upstream to manage the water, also for those who are downstream, and sometimes many countries are involved. There are actions, but more coordination is necessary. Perfect, Mrs. Morel. Thank you very much indeed. I also thank you for speaking Italian. Your Italian is really excellent, better than my French anyway. So thank you. And if you want to stay, you can maybe attend the rest of the day with us. So thank you very much for being with us. Bye-bye.
Grazie a lei e grazie ancora per l'invito.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
E andiamo speditissimi al secondo ospite della mattinata.
So that I would like to introduce Professor Georg Kaser, professor on climate and cryosphere by Innsbruck University, but also, as I said before, the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. He is a member of IPCC, so that this is an international group of experts and scientists developing some reports explaining us which is the status of health of our ecosystems and what we should expect from the future. Mr. Kaser has prepared a presentation so that we will switch into English, and the following questions will be released in English. Mountains in the climate change, the physical science perspective. The floor is yours.
A questo punto se un quarto d'ora, 20 minuti massimo, e poi facciamo una domandina.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you very much, Barbara Greggio, di avermi invitato.
Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm speaking Italian, but I have decided to speak in English for not missing anything and causing problems, since my working language is English.
I will concentrate mainly on the cryosphere in the mountains, mainly on the glaciers, and I will refer to the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which I was able to cooperate with or to serve to since 2003. It's now 20 years that I am contributing to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Let me start with just putting a picture to the cryosphere or the cryospheric components in the mountains. Oh, this is the point. This is the direction I have to look. This is looking at both the glaciers and the permafrost. Only the mountain permafrost and only the mountain glaciers. And this insert may give you a little bit of an idea how this figure is composed. To the left, you see kind of mountains which have glaciers, but the permafrost is then spread much larger to much larger areas. And Coming from that and looking to the mean 0-degree level in a certain mountain region, we then go to the right in order to see the permafrost area altitude distribution and the glacier area altitude distribution. And you see 11 mountain regions chosen for that perspective, for that image. And you see different characteristic in several mountains. For instance, in North Asia, the upper right panel, there the permafrost is the majority and there is very little glaciers. On the other side, if we look to the lower left panel, southern Andes, you see that there is a permafrost in a very high elevation and then there is glaciers only lower, and again permafrost. And this has to do with the fact that there is this dry gap in the South American Andes where the precipitation would not allow glaciers to grow. This is in northern Chile, southern Peru, southern Bolivia, where there is cold enough but not enough precipitation to grow glaciers. Anyway, this is the distribution. This is where we have to look at if we talk about climate change. And the climate has changed very rapidly. This is a 2020 years perspective. Reconstructed temperatures showing all the climate fluctuations, the medieval warm period, the Little Ice Age in the later part, in the right part of this reconstructed temperature observations. All these data, all these images you can find in the IPCC. I will give you the web link on my last slide. And then we have the observations, but not only the observations in this dark solid line, it's also the jump up to something which we do not call climate fluctuations anymore, not naturally driven, but only 100% human driven climate change. We change the climate, we change the energetic state of the climate system in a way that we take along all the fluctuations. They come along with us, but we put the entire system into a new state. And this is something which is particularly frightening, I would say, and we haven't had these temperatures. We have now reached 1.2. Here it's still 1.1 degrees above pre-industrial values, and we are rapidly changing that, and we are rapidly going toward 1.5 degrees and maybe 2 degrees and maybe beyond, and this 1.5 would be the Paris Agreement, which is to be reached, and I will show you at the end a few reasons why it should be maintained or reached. It's very dangerous to go beyond 1.5. And also in the deep past, we had no such quick and tremendous jumps in energetic state and in temperatures. Temperatures just reflecting the energetic state of the entire system. It's the global mean surface temperatures which are plotted here. And by having changed the atmospheric conditions like an insulation, so that the sun comes in as usual, but the infrared radiation, the thermal radiation, which would respond to that in order to balance the energetic state of the system, that one has been disturbed. We have, and we still do, increase the insulation effect with these greenhouse gases, mainly with the CO2, carbon dioxide. And this imbalance is expressed by a heating component, which is about 0.8, it's the upper left. I don't know whether you, oh yeah, it works. It's about 0.8 watt per square meter. The heating nowadays, it's even increasing for the time being. And with that, we have accumulated over the time period from 1971 to 2020 a heat of 380 zeta-joule. Zeta means 21 zeros behind 380 in joule, or if you transfer it into kilowatt hours, which is a little bit more commonly understood, it's 15 zeros behind 106. So it's a tremendous amount of energy which we have put in. And 90% goes into the ocean, or has gone so far into the ocean. So we don't even note it directly, but it is 1/3 of the present day sea level rise due to that, because it's a thermal expansion of these water bodies. Then we warm up land, we warm up the atmosphere. This is something we note also in our daily life. It's just a very minor percentage of that, and we put about 4% into the cryosphere. Cryosphere is the ice in the natural state on Earth, and these 4% cause all this melting, which is the second cause, the second glaciers, and the third cause, the ice sheets, for the 3.4 millimeters of sea level rise, which we experience for the time being, and it's rapidly rising, these numbers. So the energy is all about, and the energy causes the melting. And if we go back to these mountain glaciers, we have again these 11 mountain regions, and you don't have to go into details. They all decrease in mass. It's not the surface area, it's not the length, which is kind of a bit of an odd numbers, but the indirect numbers, the direct reaction to climate change is mass loss. And if you combine all those, you see there is a constant and ongoing mass loss, although the glaciers shrink and adapt to this new climate. They try to get into new balance, but they are not able because we are heating. We heat up the entire system. And if we focus on the center part, we see how between 2006 and 2015, the glacier mass loss in area-specific values, which is kilograms per square meter per year, how the different mountain regions have lost. And there is the Alps with a huge loss, a huge red bar here. But if we then convert this into sea level rise equivalent, the biggest masses come from Patagonia and from Alaska. Not very much from the mountain glaciers in the Alps, because they are so little, there is not much there. Anyway, let's go to one glacier. Maybe one of the very, very best studied glaciers on Earth is the Sinterklaasferner, just on the border between Italy to the left and Austria to the right. This is the Palabianca Weißkugel, and this is the upper part of the Hinterklaasferner just a few days ago. It was on October 14th, last week, and you see that there is, by then, that might have been the end of the summer, probably not, it was the end of the summer, because then we have experienced these cold spells, which now bring the rain and the cold weather, the autumn weather, and now we have a bit of snow over there. But by then, before the snow started, we had basically no snow left from the past winter. And we have a 70-year mass balance series there. It's the longest continuous mass balance series on Earth. And if we put that up statistically, we see that the average, that's where most of these mass balances are, is not zero. So that is far out of balance. The average is around 1 meter of water left per year. So that is 1 meter of water distributed over the entire glaciers, mass loss. And usually it should stay within these 1-2 standard deviations in order to allow us to, nature would allow a variety around some mean value, around a balance of 1, maximum 2 standard deviations. But now we have put first in 2003 with the so far extreme value of almost 3 meters of water equivalent lost, of water column lost, far into or toward the third standard deviation, almost 3 meters water loss. And the last year, that was 2021, 2022, we had an extreme of 3.5 meters of water loss. That would be a one time in 1,000 years in the today's statistics. But let me say that these statistics don't hold anymore as soon as you get out of this curve here. And we are clearly out. And this year, again, is the second strongest mass loss. It goes much, much faster than we thought. And these glaciers in the Eastern Alps will be gone soon, no matter how we behave in the next couple of years, or what we do with mitigation measures. They will be lost, and most of the Western Alpine glaciers do, and many in the small mountain areas too. How does this affect on a long-term or medium-term or transition term the glaciers and the glacier runoff? If we go from a glaciated area to a less glaciated area due to climate change to a non-glaciated area. Then we follow these decadal time scales and look at glacier runoff, snow runoff outside the glaciers, rain runoff, and groundwater. Groundwater remains constant. Rain increases as snow decreases because the 0 degree level rises. And the glaciers, they are happily giving a lot of water away because they say, we need help, or we need to give you help. And the water contribution from glaciers rises and rises until the glaciers get too small. And then this contribution from the glaciers will decrease down to 0. On a yearly time scale, looking into the summer contribution, this would be a glacier imbalance. This is a glacier on the strong mass loss, gives a lot of water from the from the glaciers into the system, into the hydrological system, and then it will be gone. So the change in the hydrological system of glaciated areas is dramatic on an annual scale and also on a daily scale. I do not go into details of the daily scale, but we will lose a lot of daily contributions, for instance, on the hot and dry days in August and September. But keep in mind that the mountains with small glaciers, this peak water, as we call it, has already passed. In the Alps, we have already passed this. In the Caucasus, we have passed this. In the tropical Andes, we have passed this. There are many glacier areas which rely on these waters. They have already passed it, and they are going into deep, deep problems with water supply. And the other point is that many mid-latitude mountain regions like the Alps, there still the most important is, and the much bigger problem is the decreasing snow cover, which I do not address in particular. So snow cover, seasonal snow cover, is much a bigger problem than the glacier loss, for instance, in the Alps. Now, how are we going to proceed? We have these socio-economic pathways on which all the climate projections are based now. And they show just how our global behavior in economies, in technology use, in behavior, in consumption behavior. And if we continue like we did in the decades before, we would go up from 40 gigatons emissions per year on carbon dioxide. I do not talk about the methane and the N2O, which are also other but not so important greenhouse gases. We would go up to 3-4 times higher values until the global population would start to decrease around 2050. That is something which we count on. And we would get up to very, very high emissions, far away from any control, from any mitigation. So nowadays, since this Paris Agreement, the states have realized, the nations have realized that they have to reduce that. And we are on a path like this, still doubling by 2100. This is what the governments have promised, but they are far away from holding these promises. So still too much. And only if we go this way, which would be the 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial values, fixation, stabilization of the climate, or this one, which is even the safer one, because this is already very dangerous. If we would follow this one, we would immediately have to go down, very quickly down, and then we would have to take out from the atmosphere a lot of CO2, else we would not hold the CO2, the 1.5 degree or the 2 degree level. We would not be able to fix the climate. It would run away, and we would have no chance to control it anymore. So it's very important that we go one of these paths, but our governments are still far, far away from that. And we have only very little time to do so. This is along this scale of colors in temperatures above the pre-industrial, which is 1850 to 1900, the average, the warming which we have experienced, and the paths we would go if we go the lowest one, the bright blue one, the dark blue one, from the previous slide, the yellow one, the red one, and the dark red one. And you see that there wouldn't be much difference in the first 20 years. this is due to the delay of response of the climate system to more energy, which we put in. So it is really within the next 20 years, or actually it is now the next couple of years, whether we can keep this path or we go to this dangerous path or we lose all the possibility to influence climate on all the other paths. And this one would take us to very, very high temperatures in average, in global average. And these are the generations. This is my generation. So we wouldn't experience very much difference on what we do. But this generation here will, first of all, have the chance to do it. The chance to, they are in power now, and they will also experience whether they have done the right things or not. This is, so to say, the last generation which can change something. And this generation of people being born around now, they will heavily have the effects of rather we go this way or we go that way. But even this way will be, the lowest way will be full of damages and will be a very difficult way. If you look to the distribution of temperatures, and this is just the temperatures, then you see that this will increase, and we have here the uppermost range 7 degrees above zero, above the pre-industrial values. And just this, because this is the most impressive one, it's not the most probable one, but the most impressive one, you see the Amazon will have tremendous problems as one of the lungs which we will have left. This will collapse. We have already temperatures up to 4 degrees above pre-industrial values in the Arctic, even here, but now it will change entirely the Arctic by its cryospheric changes in Greenland, for instance. We have big problems here in South Asia or even here, but more than anything else, the Mediterranean, the larger Mediterranean area will be a hotspot of climate change. Just to mention that all these averages, they are in extreme values already passed by far. We had on August 1st this year, temperature anomaly over the southern Andes, over southern South America, which goes up to 20 degrees above average. Above the average between 1979 and 2010, not the pre-industrial one, already a much warmer period, 20 degrees above. And this, in this area, is like if we had it here end of January or in February. Imagine temperatures going up by 20 degrees above the average in Biella in January or in February, or even up in the mountains. This is tremendous, and this will have a huge impact also on the biology, on the ecosystems over the next months and years in this area here, not so much on the glaciers and the cryosphere. Now, if we put all glaciers together on the world, and if we move them into a 1.2 degree, if we would stop at 1.2 degrees as we have reached already, we would lose about 40% of all glaciers on the world. And that would contribute with about 12 centimeters to sea level rise. If we go to 1.5, it would be 50% of all glaciers lost and 15 centimeters contribution to sea level rise. If we would go to 2 degrees, we would lose 60% or more than 60% and up to 20 centimeters rise of sea level contribution from these glaciers. We have in all glaciers about 30 centimeters of sea level potential in increase. And note that by doing these model runs, we realized that with 1 kilogram CO2, we can reduce this mass here by 20 kilograms. And then is the question, how do we produce that? We did the calculations with a Toyota Corolla. If you drive with a Toyota Corolla 5 kilometers, which nowadays is a small car, but then it was a mid-sized car, 5 kilometers, you have caused the loss of 20 kilograms, a bit more. Now, the biggest problem is the sea level rise, which we face. And this depends very much, and we will again not see differences in the first 20 years where we go, but this is going to go beyond 2100, even if we would stop the climate, because there is this huge delay in the ice melt. And we have a huge spread between half a meter and 1 meter. That was in 2021. The idea we had in order to, sea level rise, which we passed, and we will go to between 3 and 15 meters sea level rise by 2300. The 15 would be if there is something starting in Antarctica, which is dynamically very, very dramatic. And the problem is, since 2021, we have seen it starting again. We are toward that, and this one has to be moved up. By 2100, we have to count with about 1 meter of sea level rise in the global average, which is 30% more in the low latitudes. Now, just summing up, we will experience, and coming back to the mountains in a broader view, we will experience a lot of changes, be it in landslides, unstable slopes, particularly in winter when the rain goes much higher than usual. We rise up the rain and the 0 degree level, so we experience landslide in winter already. We have different avalanches, not more, but different avalanches. That will get more and more wet snow avalanches with larger damages on, for instance, constructions and buildings or whatever. We will have a strong increase in floods for many reasons. And we will, this is not a climate change thing, but we expect in future also a larger density of mankind behavior in the land use. This is something which you have heard already today. But we have not seen inside here the extreme temperatures, precipitation, and droughts that will increase in number and magnitude. We see them already increase in magnitude. We see them already increase in number, and there is no reason to expect that something which happened in Libya just recently, or in the Emilia-Romagna, or in Slovenia, would not happen in our mountain valleys too. And the mountain valleys have a much higher relief energy, we call that. They are higher, they are steeper. If you put so much water in a very short time, and they go up these events now in having the annual amount of water within one day. If you put the annual amount of water in one day on a mountain valley, you may this mountain valley not recognize anymore. This will be lost forever. We would not be able to stay there anymore. And this is just ahead in the next couple of years. So we need to do something within the next couple of years. We need to reduce our CO2 emissions and greenhouse gas emissions very, very quickly to zero. We have about 5 to 10 years. If we don't manage that, we have lost not the battle, but we have lost our stay in nature as we are used to have it. Thank you very much, and sorry for having been a little bit too long.
Okay. Okay.
I still left time for a question.
Oh, very, very fast. Just a very, very fast question. What is going to happen from now on to 2050 to the most part of international glaciers? I mean, not only European glaciers, but you are a relevant scholar, expert of tropical glaciers as well. So what's going on in the next future? Those guys will expect to see glaciers in the future, like we did?
It's the most immediate future. Yes, you will see glaciers, but glaciers that are already ill. You won't see these healthy glaciers as we have experienced them. They are all deadly ill in the Alps here, and they will be gone sooner or later. It depends on the size of the glaciers. Small glaciers we have already experienced. About 10-20% of these nameless small glaciers, which are already gone if you are out in the mountains. The bigger ones will be gone within 20 years, 10 years, 20 years. Almost every one we will experience more and more and more glaciers being gone. On a long term and on a global term, it is really dependent first of the size. The big ones will take longer. We will, in some regions, very high and very high latitude, very high altitude and very high latitude, they will not be gone entirely. But How much will be gone depends very much on our behavior, whether we are able to run down the CO2 emissions or the greenhouse gas emissions overall very, very quickly to net zero, as you have nicely mentioned. We need to go down, and this is not technically possible. We have to change our lifestyle entirely, and also our business style. Growth is not possible anymore.
That's an interesting and inspiring message of hope, mostly for youngsters, of course, because we are going to leave them the future world, of course.
Should be hope, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
There's still a little bit hope because nature would allow us to stabilize. So we have not yet closed this window, although it's going to. Whether our societies are able to do that, I'm a little bit less optimistic, but there is hope.
That's great. Thank you, Professor Kaser. Thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, torniamo.
Okay, so we can go back to Italian, and let me call Mr. Fabrizio Erbetta on stage, teacher of economy and business management at the University of Piemonte Orientale. We will speak of water, we will also speak of water crisis, and we will also speak of network losses. What is happening in our country? Let us remind you a very sad datum. That is, Italian is a champion in water loss. We lose approximately 40% of our water. The 40% of water never gets to our taps because it gets lost in the environment. And this is no little in a drought scenario. So I know that you have prepared some slides, but also as an answer to some questions that I asked. So can we have Mr. Erbetta's contribution? We have approximately 15 minutes, but we will manage. The first thing I would like to ask of you is, we know that Biella is one of the places in our region that has been considered one of the driest regions in Italy. We wouldn't believe it today, but on the long term, it is so. We have rice production, and it also suffered from the drought of the last few years, and we know how important water is for rice. So Cordar Biella and Cordar Valsesia put an alert saying that you can't make use of water unless for home use. They say you can't use it for watering the plants, for agriculture, etc. Can you fix the state of art at the moment? Where are we? Hello, everybody, and thank you for your invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here and to be able to present some sort of results that emerge from the research that my group has been leading. Especially on the subject of public utilities and also water, but not only. The topic of drought is very serious, and water systems are under pressure upstream. And if we join the effects of drought, so the shortage of water resources upstream with the problem of the network losses downstream, well, that creates a very strong pressure on the water systems, which lose resilience. So we need to perform some behaviors, as everybody was saying, at an individual level in order to correct this way. But we also need some investments to be made, important investments for the reduction of this issue of water losses, which represent 40%, which account for 40% of the input resources on average, which means that there are situations that are more virtuous, but also critical conditions, critical situations. So, to establish the management topic, I deal with water systems, and we need to start from a definition. So I am going to talk about the sector, and we will also mention the benchmarking concept in the water field, and then we will see some evidence that emerge from our research. And I will have one last slide with some evidence from our researchers. The sector is made of 3 stages. One is the operations for drinking water. That is the extraction of water from the environment and operations to make it drinkable. Then we have the collection of water in the sewage, in the drain systems, and then we have the treatment of wastewaters to put them into the environment again. In the UK, aggregated companies that perform all these stages from extraction to treatment are called water and sewerage companies. They are disciplined by the Water Authority in the UK. So we speak of integration of these operations, because what ought to be done also from a legislative point of view also in Italy is reach an integration of these stages with operators that take care of the 3 of them for the exploitation of integration economies that we call scope economies, and also to exploit scale economies, as these operators, as these managers are called to act on not at town level, but on a wider area. And we want an industrial management of an asset that is a public asset and will remain public. One of the most important elements is the search for effectiveness. This is also a goal for the regulation authorities. And in addition to the effectiveness of the service, we also want the effectiveness of the operation. This is an important goal for the operators. And in order to be able to measure the effectiveness and efficiency of these companies, a tool that is used is benchmarking. Benchmarking is what I deal with in my work. It means quantifying performance in a relative way. And this is useful for the regulator, on the one hand, so that they can map the performances of the several operators, but it is also useful for the operators themselves, as they can identify where they are in the context. Actually, the operators can't manage what they can't measure. So we need to measure the performance in order to correctly manage. And then it will also be a protection for the water resource. One way to be able to measure effectiveness, well, there actually are 2 ways. One is represented by technology, in an input orientation logic or output orientation. Generally, in public utilities and with water, we use input orientation. So a production process is identified that makes use of resources to turn these resources into a service. Amongst resources, there's also water, which must be managed prudently in a careful way and not lost in the passage between when it is seized and when it is distributed in taps. And then we also get to the final stage, that is the treatment. Network losses are an element that is combined with the problem of environmental drought, and they create a lot of pressure. They put a lot of pressure on water systems. As I said before, in spite despite in the agenda of policymakers there's always sustainability, and especially for water, which is lacking and should be administered in a prudent way. The Blue Book, that is a publication on the water system, tells us that in 2020, 40%, well, on average, 40% of the 2.4 billions of cubic meters entered into the delivery network gets lost. So the infrastructure has some criticalities that must be monitored. And it also tells us that in the benchmarking systems that are used to analyze the performances of these operators, one of the goals, that is the environmental goal of saving water and reducing losses, is an important goal, and it should be included in all policies. So measuring the performance should keep into account not only the criticalities of management, but also the ability to protect a scarce resource. The benchmarking process is made of several phases. From the selection of a benchmarking approach, and here we can have several approaches. There are parametric approaches. I am not going into detail, but the regulation authorities make use of both approaches. And once we have selected the approach that we want to use to assess the water systems, we have to apply this benchmarking model to a sample of companies, of organizations, or to all of them if we want a full thorough regulation. And at the end of the process, we need to have evidence concerning the performance and characteristics of the companies and organizations. As today we speak of companies that manage the water system, so we will have some suggestions to improve the performance, and then they should be put into practice in the water systems. To close, some evidence that emerges from our research, we have tried to also add the reduction of network losses in the benchmarking systems with estimates that are based on chronometric approaches. And what emerges here is that if we put the environmental targets here in the measurement of the performance, it is shown that on average in Italy, network losses could be halved on average. And this shows that even nowadays the management is sometimes good, but sometimes it is also very poor. Another aspect that it is useful to highlight is the economies of scale. Economies of scale are an element that should stimulate the enlargement of the borders of a company that manages water. So it would be a merger between small operator, and this could stimulate the recovery of latent inefficiency under an economic and environmental point of view. This means that we could reduce the cost also for the users, but it would also be good for the environment with a better capacity to develop and plan investments that could actually curb the network losses. Thank you. To furtherly prove this, I have seen this, especially in the northeast of Italy, as in Friuli, that is also close to the border with Slovenia. There can be networks that, as you said, can also resist strong impacts. Also the impact of the climate crisis, landslides, problems in the network, so that the waterworks is not effective anymore and we don't get water in our houses. So thank you, Mr. Erbetta, for your very interesting presentation, and also for sticking to the time that was allocated to you. Now, before we have the next guests, let us take a step back, going back to Mrs. Morel, if she's still connected, because I made a small mistake. Even the best can make mistake, and I am not the best, very clearly. So my mistake is that I didn't know that she had a presentation for us. So I am going back to her, and here she is. I am very sorry. I didn't know you had a presentation, so let me leave you the floor, and you have approximately 15 minutes.
Ma grazie ancora, però non è un problema, penso abbiamo già...
It is not a problem for me, thank you, because I have talked a lot during the interviews, but I will shortly share my presentation. Can I? Because the system says that I'm not allowed to share the presentation.
Bisogna che la regia mi dà l'autorizzo di condividere, se possibile.
I should be authorized to share the presentation.
O anche condividere le slide voi stessi, perché le avete anche.
Vediamo se riusciamo.
Adesso funziona, ok, va bene.
Ecco, forse ci siamo.
Vedete la presentazione?
Can you see it? Is it okay? Is it working? Perfect. Sorry, but I would like to speak English so that I will shift to be precise.
Yeah, thank you again, especially to Assessore Greggio for having invited me here. And I would really like to be with you in Piemonte because I love Piemonte. As I said, I'm from the Western Alps as well, but it's a very, very busy period at the moment for us with many meetings in the convention. So at least I can be online, and many greetings to everyone attending. I'm not a water expert, or a climate expert, different to the two previous speakers, because our role in the Permanent Secretariat is to bring the experts from the different countries together. And I would just like to give you a little bit more insight on the work of the Alpine Convention so that you can use it as an instrument for each of the cities in the Alps, and especially the cities present today in Biella, to transition to a more sustainable water management. So as I said, the Alpine Convention is a treaty between the 8 Alpine countries and also the European Union. When it was signed in 1991, it was the first international treaty which was covering an entire mountain range, which crosses several national borders. After that, the Carpathian Convention was signed, using a lot our expertise and exchange experience. And I briefly mentioned it. This is cooperation between the states and the European Union as well, but we also closely work with a network of observers. And one of these observers is the Alpine Town of the Year Association, of which Biella is a very active member. And this is very, very precious to have a really to really work concretely on practical issues in the field. So the convention is built around a framework convention, which sets the guiding principles, and there are also specific protocols on different topics. There is no protocol on the water topic, and for this you must look at the fact that historically, when these protocols were being negotiated, this was in the early end of the 90s, early 2000s, and this was also when the Water Framework Directive was negotiated. It was adopted in 2000, and the Alpine Convention did not start an extra process on water, and decided to deal with water as a cross-sectoral topic throughout all these the existing instruments. But there were also ministerial declarations, and I will come back later on the one on water. So in the Framework Convention, what the convention says is, was mentioned before, to protect healthy water systems by different ways. And I will give a brief overview of the issues at stake in the Alps. So this map was produced in the framework of an Interreg project called SPARE, and where we, as permanent secretariat, were an observer. And this, most of the data comes from national river basin management plans, which were prepared under the EU Water Framework Directive. And we can say that the very good ecological status is what is shown in blue, and it's not that much. I mean, of the approximately 58,000 kilometers of watercourses in the Alps, there is less than 10%, which is in good condition. And so the free-flowing Alpine river is more something of our memories and myth, but not really the current situation. The daily amount of precipitations I will not extend, because this was touched a lot by previous speakers, but just to emphasize that we have a very, very diverse situation in the Alps, and it is changing, because this is the average over the previous decades, but now it's changing a lot. And we have the changes in the patterns. We have sometimes more precipitations, but they fall more as water and less as snow, or depending on the altitude, on the area. And we have had record floods and record lows in water levels in the Alpine lakes, and so on and so forth. And now touching energy. Renewable energy in the Alps is very, very, very highly dominated historically by hydropower. You can see all the blue ones are hydropower plants, and the few other ones were the situation of renewable energies 10 years ago, and it hasn't been picking up as quickly as desirable, also because it is very, very difficult to ensure compatibility between landscape ecosystems and energy production in the Alps, because of the sensitive environment and the very scarce space available. I mean, in the Alps, we have about 17% of the surface, which is available for human activities. So for settlements, for roads, for tourism infrastructure, for train tracks, for industry. It's all concentrated on these flatter areas, and actually they are also important for animals to move as well. So it's also not just for the humans. And so, summarizing all the issues which we have to consider when we speak of water management, there is households, the drinking water, which is important, and where we have also a big responsibility towards the places downstream. Energy, so hydropower, of course, is what comes to mind, and there are still many projects in preparation in the Alps, while energy experts on the other end also agree that the potential for to really make a difference with hydropower is vastly exhausted already in the Alps. So it's really important, and that's one of our main messages in the Alpine Convention, when thinking of a new project in developing energy and renewable energy. We know we need to increase the production of renewable energy, but really we need to balance how much will it really contribute and how much will it really destroy. So it has to be a balance, and there is no point creating lots of small hydropower with a big impact on the biodiversity if it's only going to make a very small difference in the production of renewable energy in Europe. And it only has to be done, in very specific conditions and sites. Energy is also linked with water in the fact that lake and seawater can be used for heating and cooling system. There are quite innovative projects here, for instance, in the Lake of Annecy or in Monaco with the seawater. And water also has an impact on the cooling of power stations, nuclear or thermal, and this is not in the core area of the Alps, but it's becoming increasingly a problem. Biodiversity, we have a very rich biodiversity also in terms of aquatic species, and of course everything which impacts the quality of waters impacts the ecosystem. Tourism, there is both the snow and the summer tourism, which is impacted. Water sports have developed quite successfully in many alpine valleys. And if there is a competition in summer or very low lake levels and so on, it's becoming a problem. The snow, Georg Kasa mentioned extensively what changes we can expect. And also here we have an interest of using water for snowmaking, which also changes the way the water is available to the system. Agriculture, which I mentioned before, has to be to adapt to increased droughts. Natural hazards, be it floods, be it droughts, be it permafrost throwing with the events which we saw at the Marmolada last year, also in the Fluchtholm in Austria, and which are impacting, for instance, the management of infrastructure, mountain huts, and so on, and releasing more greenhouse gases and also potentially harmful microorganisms. And this is when the ice melts within the permafrost soil. Speaking of soil, I wish to mention very important areas in the Alps, which are the peatlands, because they have a really high capacity for the retention of water. So they can be very instrumental in climate change mitigation by absorbing the CO2, but also in climate change adaptation by averaging the availability of water in the system. And on the other end, when the peatlands are destroyed, they release greenhouse gases, and they do so very, very strongly. So they become negative in terms of climate change mitigation. And in terms of adaptation, yes.
Dr. Borrell, couple of minutes left, please.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And finally, one final aspect of water, which I think is quite interesting also for today's audience, is when we take the perspective of the cities. In the cities, we experience more and more hotspots because of the urban environment. And in the Alps, we have the chance to have quite a few streams. And there are interesting experiences on how to open up again the streams which have been closed in the past decades. And of course, this needs to go hand in hand with natural hazards management. And there have been quite some experiences also within the Alpine towns, which are also members of the Alpine Town Association. And now I will just not extend, but just illustrate the fact that the report of the State of the Alps was mentioned before. This is also work. We had a platform which worked both on hydropower, on the climate change adaptation, and on drought more recently. And there were several conferences organized in the Alps and a ministerial declaration, which was 3 years ago. So really to reinforce the messages on the need to cooperate to preserve and restore water in the Alps. And just a few more moments on the climate change, which is what we have tried to adopt on a more holistic view in the last few years, and where water is a very important part. I refer us to our website, which is alpconf.org, and where you will find all these documents. There is a topic entry with water management, and you will find all this water and climate. And just to illustrate the fact that we work cross-sectorally, we have a target system for the Alps for the horizon of 2050. Here are the targets for water, Alpine-wide optimized water management. This is what I mentioned in the interview. Drinking water security and sustainable flood risk management are the three main targets, and there are some implementation pathways which have been developed with really concrete measures, which not just the people who are experts within the Alpine Convention, because they cannot implement everything by themselves. So it's an appeal for all the stakeholders in the field to own these implementation pathways and implement them in their daily activities, daily competencies. And then I will also close with a final remark on the fact that there is another mechanism for Transalpine cooperation, which existed, was founded in 2016. This is the macro-regional strategy for the Alps. And here, the Alpine Convention is a very active observer, and it actually co-leads one of the working group, which is the action group on natural resources and cultural resources, together with the land Carinthia. And here again, this is a group of experts from the different Alpine countries which work on the different relevant topics of water. And actually yesterday, the EUSALP held its annual forum in Switzerland, and water was a very important topic. So again, the message is we need to cooperate across the borders. And then thank you very much for your attention. Wish you a really inspiring further 2
Good.
days.
So, thank you, Dr. Morel, for your inspiring presentation. Sorry again, of course, for my previous misunderstanding. So,
No problem.
thank you very much. So, adesso torniamo di nuovo all'italiano.
Now we go back to Italian for a presentation of the next two guests, Professor Agostino Giampietro, Mrs. Laura Zanotti from the School Territorial Office of Biella. They are on stage, but I don't know why, because there is some mystery about it. There will be a surprise of which the moderator was not warned, which is quite bad. So let me leave you the floor for the presentation of what I only know that it's a contest for schools. Hello, everybody, all the speakers, the audience, and also to the people who are connected remotely. Just let me thank Mrs. Greggio and all the town council. It is always a pleasure to work with them. In particular, in this situation, in this contest, because we were called to participate not just as listeners, but as protagonists, and especially the students of our schools were. In these terms, we have shared a synergy that is aimed at creating that creativity that was already mentioned this morning. And we absolutely believe that it is a strategic factor in this context for sustainable development. The goal to improve the quality of education is something that we all agree on. Only with this improvement can we plan together something that is meant at an effective ecological transition. And this is something that was mentioned so many times this morning. We really would like to pass on to our students a message. Even in all these troubled times and in everything that we said today, the future of the youth still has to be written. And we believe that they can be the ones who do it. On all this, we have tried to put up a contest for them. And the inventor of this contest is my colleague, my teaching colleague, Agostino Giampietro. So let me leave the floor to Mr. Giampietro, who is going to reveal the secret about how the contest was organized. So thank you, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Let me thank again Mrs. Greggio and Mr. Ravarini. We spoke with them a few weeks ago of the opportunity of presenting at this very important event the contest of which the protagonists are going to be our students. I am very excited speaking in front of you all, and I was seeing that somebody was already smiling, but this is the title of our contest, and we will also explain what the signs from the future are. So let me tell you that in this forum some keywords emerged. One of them is change and one is certainly future. Let me tell you what this contest is about. It is meant for second grade students, for high school students. They are called to plan or to design a scenario in which they talk to themselves in 50 years. So they exchange real information on the world as it is in 50 years. This is an idea. Maybe it is not very original. It is not my own. It is quite widespread in science fiction in many variants. But they will be left independence of action and in the use of their imagination and creativity. The school office wanted to only provide an educational support apart from this science fiction feeling. And we have taken some ideas from the Joint Center for Scientific Skills, the JCC, and so we have many skills that are cross-cut, and they are very important. So they do not deal with the school subject only, and learning today is really moving towards these cross skills. In particular, we were curious about 3 skills: future literacy, and explorative thought. That is the ability to explore the future and imagine a possible future scenario. And here we are making use of the great creativity of students. They will be the protagonists, and they will have to imagine a possible future, starting from a critical analysis of the problems that we have today. Global issues that you have described before, like the environment, the desertification, the water shortage. So starting from there, they must forecast themselves into the future and try and describe as they wish. So it can be art, it can be literature. There is no instruction on that, because we do not want to stop their creativity. They can make use of storytelling, comics, podcasts, or even just literature. So no boundaries on that. The evaluation, the assessment criteria for the Commission to evaluate you are 3. The innovative capacity to create a product that is new, the ability to make this product available in social media and on the web, and the ability to create in the audience some reflection, some critical reflection. So this is also important. The addressees are the students, and in such interesting situations we can also realize and make students realize that you must always be optimistic in the end. The future is not written. Nobody's future has been written, and of course you have a lot to say about your future. Thank you, Mr. Gianpietro and Mrs. Zanotti. And now, before the last hour, that is going to lead us to lunch break. I guess we are all a little bit tired, but I think Mrs. Greggio still wants to have a couple of words with you. I would like to reply to the teacher. I thank the whole department for their cooperation, and I would like to tell the students thank you for what you're doing. We are preparing some very interesting visits for the winners, and we are working on entertainment, so dinner, pizza, and everything that can start from there, from here to Easter, as we will have the award ceremony in April, and the jury will select the most interesting projects. So I am already trying to find some very appealing prizes. Thank you for participating. And now we are perfectly on time, and we have one last hour. This hour will be divided into three, as we have three guests. As I told you in the beginning, the topics that we are dealing with are many. We mentioned water, mountains, glaciers, and now we are moving, but we are not changing topic, as we still speak of sustainable living, and this is something that concerns us, especially those who live in cities, because we will speak of regeneration, sustainable dangerous materials. Do these places have an appeal? Are they sexy, as it is said, for politics, for real rehabilitation strategies? They are very sexy indeed.
Well, yes, since I have been working on this, and Biella's territory has been training territory for me, because until 2010 I have never worked on the industrial heritage, but thanks to the relationships together with Biella, but also thanks to the role that I've been playing within the IPI association that for 25 years has been working on that, I have studied and I have become an expert. According to my opinion, not just for my personal opinion, we are experiencing an high appeal. The last century has been the most important one according to the developing and development of archaeological and industrial heritage. If we are talking about Biella territory, Valle Elvo and Valsessera and so on, but talking about Trossi, Rivetti or Maurizio Sella, talking about the factory over there and others that are more innovative ones, of course, it's something different. But we can say that industrial heritage is distinguished by being extremely versatile. The word industrial evokes many concepts and ideas, not just huge volumes, of course. Yes, it is often huge, but evokes the production of something. And the vocation of some factories is regenerating and being regenerated. And across Italy, and I can say that recently I have participated in a Rotary Club debate, and they brought some examples, many examples of this heritage that often are unknown. The city of Turin has changed and modified their urban planning thanks to the Augusto Cagnardi planning, talking and thinking about regeneration of these cities. As far as Milan is concerned, talking about Gucci, Gucci and Prada, they are establishing their headquarters in this kind of buildings. So that I can say that industrial heritage can has an essential value if it is used as a challenge for sustainability. And when I'm talking about sustainability, I'm thinking about, of course, water, but also energy, infrastructure, and so on. So that we have to be sustainable compared to a world that, as our moderator talked at the beginning of this day, that we do not need to build anything more. Recycling and reusing should be our slogan, not just to create parking areas or, I don't know, stores and so on, but rethinking the spaces according to the challenges that the city is facing. So that hinting at the PNRR, so the National Plan for Reconstruction, you know that the guidelines for actions are many and fundings goes in line with those principles. We could think about reusing some fundings and principles category in M1, so contemporary activity, has been thought to regenerate creativity within these areas. Creativity, again, Biella is a creative city. Biella is a manufacturing and industrial city, so that if we match these elements, of course, it could be interesting. Yes, my second question would want to describe the current situation of our territory. And as we know, Italy is continue to using up soil. The excessive urban planning proves that we are consuming every day in a year hundreds of square meters, so that we would like to foster good practices. But Italy built a lot, of course, for private buildings, but also for public ones. Of course, I come from Rome, that overcame all the indicators as far as urban planning is concerned, so that this could be a green building and green urban planning, but maybe it is not that green. So these are the two sides of the same coins, and this is the state of the art. This is to introduce you to the second question, since you are working as a representative of the Association of Archaeological Industrial Heritage, but also you are a public service representatives in SABAP, so archaeology and landscapes and so on. In 2023, according to your opinion, please give us a little hope. Have we raised awareness as far as regeneration is concerned, also in relation to policies? Yes, I could say that, according to my opinion, also the presence of students here is fundamental, because the awareness of policy starts from the awareness of people. If we are not getting used to raise awareness among the citizens, we would never raise awareness through the plans and the actions. In June 2022, our association carried out this second forum for the the state of the art of the association and held in Rome. And you will find the reports published in our website. From this forum, we can say that Italy is particularly rich in developing this kind of action, and also industrial heritage is essential and fundamental since it is versatile, so the possibility to be regenerated is particularly high, and it is also attractive for production. If we think about the OGR in Turin, which represents a unique examples that has been funded a lot by the foundation, so that the value that they prove and show is that in the industrial element is still present within the building, proving also the degradation of the building itself. But these could be attractive for all the performances that have been carried out within those buildings in relation to culture, but also innovation and startups. As far as water is concerned, industrial heritage could be rethought and regenerated also for making it a startup hub, also for a new water management. Just to give you an example, Taiwan is a city where water issue is opposite to ours. So the city has been flooded, so it is an opposite situation. Master plan project through different projects of carrying and directing waters within rivers, and then that water is managed. We have water, but the way in which we have water is different from the past, so that, yes, you were talking about the bombs of water, but that is for joking. So when we have excessive water, this is harmful, of course, but actually, if we would use it in a different way, it could be a positive element. Figures are important. Scientists and researchers carried out some studies to detect how it rains, but still a lack of information has been distinguished our society. You're right. Rains are still present, but it rains in a bad way, we could say, because from the 90s to 2020, compared to the previous spare time, brings a 5% less. 5%. So it is not that rain is lacking. There is a decrease accounting for 5%, but we should manage this difference, this change also in raining habits. Yes, in this sense, lots of studies have been released in rethinking industrial heritage and startups which are studying how to cultivate in particular time and period of the year according to the rains. Let's think, for example, living water, about crops and cultivation in the photovoltaic structures. Yes, agrivoltaic system is something belonging to our future. This is a new direction. So that we have to find out the systems to go in line with energy saving and better water management compared to other needs. For example, cultivation, recycling, reusing, and urban planning in the view of regeneration. I think that we should invest in the startups studying these kind of structures and strategies. Yes, just the last question, 5 minutes left. So that which are the most important challenges in relation to regeneration, that people should face or will face in the future, since the scenarios are rapidly changing and developing? Yes, again, I would like to repeat that for the fact that industrial heritage is strongly widespread across Italy, the challenge is to link this issue to sustainability. Since sustainability, according to my opinion, is also culture, because very often heritage is a cultural heritage, so that we have to protect it from an architectural point of view, so that we should find recycling and reusing systems in relation to sustainability as far as economy, energy is concerned, also water, of course, so that this could be the challenge. And this would be a great challenge, since heritage is particularly rich in this sense. So it would be great, not just for Biella territory, but for Italy as a whole. Great. Thank you very much, Miss Natoli.
Chiamerei
Let me now call on stage our next guest, architect Mrs. Passadore from the National Council of Architects, Landscapers and Keepers. Good morning, everybody. It was a pleasure to listen to the speakers who came before me. They opened our eyes and our interest for what the primary asset is, that is the conservation of ecosystems on this planet. This is something on which we should all be working. We can't postpone this anymore. We must act and take our responsibilities. So, as a National Council, we are also very much worried about climate change. We see it from the point of view of the designers. Yes, you are actually a very good addition to this panel, because you represent the National Council of a professional association that is really at the center of this revolution, of this important revolution. And the keywords are regeneration and sustainability. So these are the two pillars on which we could build. Sorry for using architectural words, but these are the pillars on which we should build the society of the future, also from an urban point of view. So I would like to know what the role of the National Council of the Architects and Landscapers Association is playing in this society on these two topics of regeneration and sustainability. These two terms are very important and they are closely linked, especially sustainability as applied to regeneration. Widens its goals and its scope, and it implies an awareness for designers, because they have to act with different tools, with a different awareness compared to the territory. We must keep our resources, the resources that we have, and especially we need an extra effort. It was said before, we must keep our cultural identity. and that is also very important. If I can give you an example, a very recent context in which we had to work, we were called at a hearing in the Senate, and we really appreciated that because they started the project of law for urban regeneration. That is very good news indeed. We were called to assess 2 law projects, and it is recent news that they just arrived in Legislative Decree 903. But we have some requests for intervention that we have already presented at the hearing. So we ask that urban regeneration is included in a wide national strategy. Only this way can it be a regeneration that aims at sustainability under all respects, social, financial, and environmental. And to make it happen, we believe it is crucial to create a strategy in order not to fragment the decision-making centers, and so that all the institutions and all the government's representatives can express their opinion and make decisions, but also be in control on the territory of how these plans are implemented. Another appreciation that we had concerning this legislative decree is a proposal that we had always been fans of, is the 2 stages contest. This is a procedure for adjudicating contract that allows to have good quality works from a landscape and artistic and sustainability point of view. This is a process that has been used widely in Europe, and the National Council committed on this. We are also promoting it on a platform. We have a platform where tenders are announced, and we had 200 from the Ministry of Education last year. This is an element that ensures all the transformations in view of regeneration. A regeneration plan, in order to be implemented, must also include incentives. In our opinion, we need tax incentives also in view of the goals of regeneration. So we could really support these activities. Let me ask you one thing. This is very interesting indeed. At the legislation level, there is no national law on regeneration. So urban regeneration belongs to the cities and to the financial budget of the local administration. Well, some regions accepted these principles in their regional laws, but there is no national legislation. In the previous government was trying to carry out some bills, and on that occasion they ended in one set of laws, but it was never actually it was never made true, so it was just left where it was. So we hope it starts again, and we hope this journey will make everybody happy also, because I hope they accept all these suggestions of ours. Maybe also including a fund to to make all the local administrations make use of the tender. I am going to mention another topic with you. We often speak of net zero emissions in all contexts, so also in your own. Do you think these goals can be achieved? Do we have knowledge, innovation, and maybe will, a political will, to really get to those goals of net zero emissions? Yes, so of course the greenhouses directive and zero emission by 2050 are goals that we must establish for our own. From a technical point of view, the architect's point of view is that we have no excuses. We should work to work on the life cycle of materials, because we know it. We know the consequences of all the actions that we perform and that we plan. When we plan or when we design new works, we must take everything into account. And I believe that there is commitment on behalf of the architects on that. But a fragility that is typically Italian is the actual implementation of the directives due to the peculiarity of our architectural heritage. You have boundaries and you have yes, there were some intermediations, so maybe historical buildings are accepted. Other buildings that have some peculiar qualities, or maybe second residences or houses that measure less than 50 square meters, are not. It is not compulsory for them to abide in these terms, but our building tissue is very frail. We have 11 million houses that were built before 1989, out of a total of, well, the total number of houses is maybe approximately 30 million, so 30% approximately. And I don't have the actual data on the whole heritage, but I think it is a lot. So maybe more than 30% out of the total. What's also important is that we reach a result that is good. We don't want a result because we had to achieve it. So any result is not good for us. And I think that derogation on these deadlines can only be given thanks to the actual results that we want to achieve. So in terms of sustainability, but also of certainty of what the final result is for the community. We believe that is crucial because an architect deals with how and where people live. So quick interventions in order to achieve a result, but that can destroy the identity and the way of living of a community is something that we do not want to see. That is not our goal. One last flash question, and then I will set you free. As you mentioned, the legislative procedure, do you have a feeling that we can maybe get to have a national plan for regeneration, and when? That depends. Yes, the last question is always difficult. if we work effectively and with a lot of interest and effort on that, I believe that in 5 years maybe we can get to great results. But what really matters is to be able to create that direction room. In other countries, they had it. And thanks to this direction committee, they could make something very important and they could implement the plans. So this could be a blend between politicians and practitioners. Yes, of course, we need that in politics. And then they will have to participate with professionals, practitioners, and all the people who must be involved at several levels in this transformation, of course. Okay, very well. I think we have spoken of all the things that we had planned to. Let me now also thank Mr. Passadore. Thanks for your time.
E arriviamo all'ultimo ospite della mattina.
So that I would like to introduce the last guest before lunch. Architect Vittorio Porta, please. President of Biella's Registers of Architects. Welcome. Thank you very much. Yes, we have already spoken together about the themes, and yes, I have read Ithaca. Wow. Yes, lots of interesting aspects. Ithaca is an acronym for Institution of Transparency of all these contracts and tenders, which is an important tool which allows to test performance of buildings in compared to the consumption, energy impact, and so on. I hope I have described it quite a lot. Yes, Ithaca was born in 2000 through a convention among regions in order to create a system to evaluate and measure buildings, not just for efficiency, but for a series of parameters. These represent measurement tools starting from the analysis of the site where the investment is implemented, so that it is based on the urbanization of the area, the distance from the bus stops which are present in the territory, because we do not want to create an overcharge on transportation. It is based on the analysis of how many cycling parkings are available on the area, or on how many are introduced during the intervention. It is based on the internal control area, alternative and renewable energies supply, wind power, and so on. But it is also based on the problems of this site. Radon, for example, so that the analysis is based on many elements that at the end of the assessment we release 5 clusters: quality, resource consumption, environmental charge, indoor environment, and quality of service. So that in all these 5 clusters we find out some criteria that have to be adapted according to the region in which they are set, according to the regulations issued by government and regional laws, so that this protocol divided in the first one that was born in 2000 has been transferred to schools, buildings, hospitals, covering all types of buildings. Sorry for interrupting you. I have read, maybe it is an incorrect information, but this protocol is not mandatory in all cases, but for public buildings, according to some criteria, but it is a volunteering protocol because, of course, it takes a lot of energy compared to the mandatory ones that has the aim just to show the structure of the building. Sorry for interrupting you. Yes, you're totally right, because this protocol is mandatory when interventions are linked to public funding, so that we assess and evaluate the intervention. The first steps, when we draft the preliminary project through a score ranging from 0 to 5. The second step, the executive one, when we write down all the details of the assessment of the intervention, and then the final steps, the final evaluation and assessment, where we report changes that have been carried out and performances that have been achieved. The performance of the photovoltaic panels, how much shading is provided also during summer, linking to the changes we are living and experiences nowadays. We were talking about rains. Yes, of course, today we are living the typical Biella's climate, typical of in the past. In September, of course, we experienced sunny days, but actually water never missed here. So soil is fundamental, so that groundwater could be rich in water, then to supply water to people in need. I was in Sicily. I traveled to Sicily last week, and I found out how much lucky we are, because we are realizing the value of a certain good when we are missing it. In this case, a friend of mine has experienced a problem in the pumping of water, and the tank was empty, so that we were waiting 2 days for having an access to water. Yes, we use the showers in the beach and stop. I would like just to stress the responsible use of water, shower, and other systems. If we use it, being aware of it, of course, we can create savings. And probably we never found out the importance and the issue of water. We need to intervene. And this protocol represents a tool to assess through 5-6 criteria as far as hydropower supply, water usage for indoor and outdoor purposes, soil, but also wastewater emission in dam, because less water you use, the less water you release to the environment. Yes, talking about water, maybe tomorrow we will realize that we will waste drinking water. This is stressful for me, because the water of toilet is drinking water, actually. And again, we are wasting water. Now we have 2 ways In the toilet, the small one, 3 accounts for 3-4 liters, and the bigger one accounting for 5. Flushing water in the toilets, and my parents told me, yes, remember to flush the water. Now I have to educate my son and daughters to save water when they need a toilet. French people are finding solutions to recover domestic wastewater, to reuse it, to flushing, for example, the toilet. Ithaca, that I think represent an innovation compared to the first issue of the project itself, could be regenerated and renovated again, because times are changing and the situation is changing. First of all, raising awareness among citizens, because we know that rules and regulation can exist, but people cannot comply with them. Ithaca is a kind of system which is mandatory for public interventions, but was born in Piedmont region in case of widening of buildings. So widening buildings according to some criteria, according to some level of protocol, resulted in some positive criteria. Yes, again, you were talking about toilet. Yes, I made a calculation. A family made up of 3 individuals, if you save the water of flushing, you can save a cubic meter. A cubic meter can cost €5 more or less. So this is kind of ridiculous amount of money. But reusing or recycling raining water, for example, and I know that some colleagues already done it, create a double network, so a tank for wastewater, water for toilets, sanitation, laundry rooms, and so on. Because of course, if that tap issues not drinking water, of course I would not use it. Differentiating drinking water in the kitchen, in the bathroom, so no obligations are referring to that kind of issues. We have regulation as far as issues of energy consumption, energy saving. And as Passadore said before, our buildings are located in the center of the city, in the historical centers of the cities. Intervening and adding photovoltaic panels is not always possible because there are some bonds which do not allow us to insert and put photovoltaic panels on that kind of buildings. So that we should be aware that in this perspective, we should take some step forward. When we are sure that this environmental and sustainable impact is essential, of course, without changing the architecture of a building, should be implemented apart from these bonds that sometimes can hamper economics and money. Ithaca today will be issued through the last updating in Apulia, referring to the last regulation of June 2022. This protocol goes in line with the regulation. Once the regulation is updated, the protocol is updated too. So some criteria have been changed. Maybe because the criteria have changed or because they have been embedded in the regulation itself. Regenerating the building from production site to a residential site. Also concerning the materials linked to the sustainability, this is very interesting, really interesting. But a last question that I would like to make to you. Sustainable building, regeneration. How are linked to the DNSH, do not significant harm, held by Europe, eliminating any kind of impact instead of creating problems, eliminating the current situation which is causing problems. DNHC represent a conservation, a protection principle, which is divided into 6 clusters, 6 criteria, which assess the global situation with a view to analyze the intervention that is made also from an economic point of view. Let's think about companies without creating harm to environment, damage to environment. And these represent an obligation from Europe that has been fulfilled by our country, which is mandatory for those who want to participate in tenders and in the National Plan for Recovery and Resilience in relation to mitigation of climate change. So we are talking about greenhouse gases emissions, adaptation to climate change, so that understanding if this intervention could be positive or negative according to the future climate conditions, activities or people, nature or buildings, sustainable usage, protection of waters, groundwater, but also seas and oceans, understanding the perspective, the future direction to pave, circular economy, prevention and recycling of waste, of course, reusing and recycling is something fundamental, prevention and reduction of pollution, so that if this intervention could be improve the level of pollution and the protection and recovery of ecosystems, understanding and finding out is this kind of intervention useful or not in protecting habitats and environment within the Union as a whole, so that it represents a kind of system ensuring an improvement instead of worsening of the situation itself in terms of biodiversity, climate, water, and so on. Are you an optimistic person? Yes, I am. I have 2 sons, so yes, I should be optimistic, of course. Mr. Marco Merola, we were really convinced about the importance of having you. A big applause for you, because you were brilliant in talking and communicating some important concepts. Thank you very much also for guiding all our international guests, because it was kind of easy understanding this difficult concept in a kind of light debate accessible for everybody. Thank you very much, Marco. This was a kind of technical and scientific debate. As you know, at 2:30 we will host some guests talking about regulation with Mr. Panza, the Councillor for the Regional Affairs for Mountains, and then we will welcome Reinhold Messner, a mediatic testimonial. And then we will have our guest from Kai. Thank you very much for being here also this morning. And then we will meet companies. This morning was focused on agriculture, on industries and so on. Yes, this afternoon will be focused on textile companies, of course. We are in Biella. Then we will talk with agricultural companies,